Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Derek Arcuri, and for the next 1 hour or so, I'll be uh, presenting Genetec Retail Sense for the very first time amongst our channel community. I'm also joined by Stefan Suter, who is the application group lead. This is a very special webinar for us because it is the first time that we witness a channel webinar that is presented by an application group. So for those that may not be familiar with Genetec's sort of structural makeover, Genetec is sort of carving out certain sections of the business, and we're essentially putting a little bit more focus towards specific verticals. These verticals include airports, retail, as hence the Genetec Retail Sense, traffic and ITS applications, as well as law enforcement. So this is sort of in line with Genetec focusing more on the customer experience and being there not only from a visualization layer, but also focusing more on the outcomes. So for the next hour or so, what we'll do is present Genetec Retail Sense, the new application that is available today. We'll start the presentation by going through a little bit of insights into the retail market, retail intelligence market in general. We'll then do a deep dive into the overview of Genetec Retail Sense, and we'll even show a quick demonstration of the application. We'll solve some of the, we'll show how the application is meant to solve some of the challenges that we've identified. We'll go through a quick roadmap and then talk about ordering, services, and support. We'll conclude the presentation with a quick update on sales tools that are available for your selling efforts, along with some closing remarks. Throughout any time during the webinar, please do submit your questions using the question dialog box. There are two of us sort of monitoring these questions, so feel free to send them throughout the presentation, and we'll sort of summarize the questions that we got at the end of the session for the dedicated Q&A. So let's first start off the presentation by talking about some of the typical challenges of a modern retailer, specifically the brick and mortar retailers. As we know that there's more of a presence online, and often our products that we're selling within stores are being somewhat commoditized because we're competing with the global economy. So some of the challenges that we've discovered amongst our retail customers is that a lot of the retailers on the business side are flooded with data that's not typically consumable for decision making. Often brick and mortar retailers have difficulty reacting to real-time consumer insights. The data is very unstructured and lacks that structure needed to make informed decisions on the fly. And also the consumer landscape is changing. Consumers are becoming increasingly impatient, they're connected, and they're looking for bargains. You might, I confess that I often walk into a retailer and I look at their competitive pricing to see, how much am I paying for this very product? It's sort of just this mass commoditization of products. So the retailers that want to cut through the noise have to really focus on not just serving a product, but serving a customer experience. So we'll talk a little bit more. I'll be using a couple of examples. As a Canadian myself, I typically use North American examples, but I'll try to cater to a more diverse audience for this presentation. So some of the profiles that we're looking to address with Retail Sense include retail marketing, operations, and merchandising. What I'd like to do for the next 3 slides is to talk about some of the challenges that we've discovered with each of these profiles. So the first one is retail marketing. Retail marketers often need to understand which marketing vehicles or which promotions actually drive visits, what drives footfall, right? Which displays actually drive footfall. So what's bringing people into the store, whether it be a display, an end cap, a mannequin in the front, or what sort of promotion, whether it be promotions online, promotions in flyers, and the type of promotion that actually drives people into the store. Right? So knowing which promotions are successful and which aren't. They also struggle understanding which promotions drive sales and engagement. Right? So once we have customers within the store, how do they actually interact with the merchandise? How do they interact with the promotion? How do they interact with the signage? How do they consume our messages that we have laid out throughout the store? And finally, collaborating with other stakeholders for store-wide campaigns. Now, often marketing will throw a wrench in anything that's ordinary. Marketing will play around with different promotions, try new things in order to increase profitability, right? Their main goal. So it's very important for marketing to collaborate with operations and merchandising to ensure that their campaigns are successful. For example, if we have a promotion, a 20% off promotion tomorrow, we have to ensure that retail operations is, of course, compensating for the expectations we're going to have in consumption, in footfall, and also coordinate with merchandising to ensure that we have enough product to meet expectations we have for demand. So these are just some of the typical challenges that modern retailers face from a marketing perspective. Their core key performance indicators typically include visits, sales, customer retention, and sales per square foot. Now let's start talking a little bit more about retail operations. These are the people that typically want to ensure that the in-store experience is flawless. So they're tasked with scheduling personnel in order to match the visitors throughout the month. Right? We want to make sure that we have enough staff to answer the questions that consumers have and to actually help them throughout their purchase journey. They also are tasked with reducing customer abandonment by ensuring that guests get the attention they need. Now, how often have you walked into your favorite tech store expecting to get some information about the latest smartphone or computer that you're planning on purchasing, but not having anyone available to talk to you, right? And when you don't have someone available to talk to you, you're less likely to purchase. Well, we're looking at a couple of stats later on. And finally, reducing abandonment caused by long queues. Now, if you're like me, I'm an avid Starbucks drinker, and it does happen often where you walk into a Starbucks and there's just a line that's way longer than I'm expecting, and of course I leave. So I walk into the store with the intent to make a purchase, but I leave because the queues are just too long for it's exceeding the perceived value that I'm getting from that in-store experience. So some of the key performance indicators for this profile would include average basket value, which is essentially the average transaction size per customer, the customer engagement, abandonment, and the cost of labor. Now, we've discovered, talking to the business side of retailers, is that the cost of labor is their number one expenditure and one of the biggest costs that they're aiming to control. So if we can just optimize our cost of labor, making sure that the staff that we have planned for the floor are in fact spending most of their time interfacing with customers and enhancing the customer experience. Our final profile for this application is retail merchandising. These are the people that create forecasts and make sure that products get from the distribution centers to the actual stores in the best possible time and perfect product quality. So they want to understand how different store locations consume their assigned products, right? Imagine being responsible for whether it be, say, tennis rackets, and if there's one store that's located next to a university or perhaps next to a tennis club, of course, that location will be consuming their assigned product at a greater rate than locations that are perhaps far away from a dense population. They're trying to understand which products require more visibility or impulse purchases. An example might be you walking into a tech store with the intent to purchase an Xbox, but you might also get a couple of CD cleaners as you're next to the cash. And Another challenge is reducing out of stocks caused by inaccurate forecasts, right? Forecasts are typically not easy. They're relying on historical data, of course it's really it's also a mix of gut feel to ensure that there's enough product to meet demand, but not overstocking where there's essentially costing the organization to store product that isn't being consumed. So their core key performance indicators include product quality, along with out of stocks. So a question we often ask retailers is, what are your drivers of customer deflection? Essentially, what drives people to walk into your store with the intent on purchasing something and then walk out, right? What is it about that in-store experience that's not pleasing them? And we went to the drawing board and we sort of looked at some of the main contributors to customer deflection. And that's essentially long queues, like that Starbucks example, out of stocks or poor merchandising, and can't find sales help. So long queues account for, well, 56% of people won't return to that specific store if they have a negative queuing experience. It's more than half of your customers will never return to your store if your queuing experience is not up to par. Right? So we want to definitely look at handling that. Out of stock or poor merchandising is essentially the fundamental of the in-store experience, right? If we're walking in with the intent on buying something, we've got to make sure that the product is at least there and the product is at least in good quality. And out of stocks on average cost the average U.S. grocery retailer about $800 per week. And can't find sales help. 90% of us consumers are more likely to buy when we're helped by a knowledgeable sales associate. So this stat alone just confirms that we're not going into a store, we're not driving to the closest Kmart or Walmart for product. We're walking into these stores for an experience, right? We're walking in there so that we can get the help that we need from someone that understands us, that's someone that understands our needs, that understands our pains, and ultimately we're buying from the brick and mortar stores because of the experience that we're getting within the store. So the question is, how much is customer attrition or customer deflection costing your retail business by turning a blind eye to just these three criteria alone? So let's now focus a little bit more on the Genetec Retail Sense overview. So what will Genetec Retail Sense do for retailers? The intention here is to leverage your existing security equipment to understand customer behavior and then enhance that customer experience or that customer engagement by maximizing the exposure that floor staff have with guests, so ideally reacting in real time, with the end motive to increase profit, ensuring that marketing promotions are relevant, that shoppers are helped when needed, and that shelves are properly stocked. So it goes from understanding your shopping behavior to actually guiding that response, reacting in real time to turn something that's unfavorable into something that is favorable. Let me just put myself on Do Not Disturb there. Sorry about that. To actually increasing profit, right? So making turning something that's undesirable to something that is desirable. So here's an example of our people counting. So we have a top-down camera here that is counting how many people are walking in and out. And of course, as people walk in and out, we're updating the dashboard that you can see on the left here, on the right rather. So the sensors that we're using for Retail Sense include cameras as sensors, along with point-of-sale data. More sensors are to come. That's part of our objective, is to aggregate more sensors as well. So just so that you get a quick visual view of how we're leveraging cameras as a back end in order to deliver KPIs and statistics about your business, your retail business. So with that said, let me jump into the product demo. So here you'll see that I've launched the Retail Sense dashboard, And the dashboard is really my area, my zone that's made specifically for me. So if there are any favorite stores or favorite modules, I can save them right to my dashboard. So as I log in, I'm greeted with that same screen. It gives me a quick view at some vital stats. So walking through some of this, we have a real-time people counting that's comparing a couple of stores. I have those stores compared over here, so I'm looking at Montreal and I'm getting some vital stats as to the peak conversion rate, the peak time, where we're getting most foot traffic, and how many visits I had throughout the day, along with comparing yesterday to today. Same applies for Toronto. I'm getting those quick statistics, and I can also compare conversion rates. So it's sort of my customized dashboard where I can compare. I can look at weather. How does weather affect sales? How does it affect footfall? How does it affect conversion rates? And also that calendar is one pane of glass where I can collaborate with retail operations and retail merchandising. So I might save an event on, say, the 11th of the following year, or the following month rather, and say that the 11th of next month will be a promotion on 20% off on all clothing within the store. And that is also the cue for operations and merchandising to ensure that they have enough stock and they have enough staff to cope with the incremental influx of consumers that we're expecting for that day. So let's jump into our store view. So within our store view, we can flip around from different districts, different locations, and jump into have everything organized based on their location. And just by clicking on one of these modules, we can get a deeper dive into how does this business look like, right? How many visits are we getting? What's their conversion rates? How do their queues look like? This is perfect for from an HQ perspective to jump in and benchmark different stores and see how certain stores are reacting in real time. And it's let's focus in on how many, what does footfall look like for my Toronto store today. So I can see that I have more of an influx of consumers at 5 p.m., same at 3 p.m., and I want to see what the relationship is from a conversion rate perspective. So again, conversion rates are how many people walk in versus how many people purchase. So a converted customer, we notice that we have a higher conversion rate when there are fewer people within the store. Right? So at 7 p.m. we have fewer people, and we have a higher conversion rate at that time, where it's an inverse relationship between visits and conversions, and that's most likely because, well, I'm bombarding my staff with too many visitors, too many customers. So that's just one little quick glance at some of the info we can get from jumping into that level. But going back to that all-store view, what I typically like showing is that whole list format where we can compare vital statistics like your conversion rate, filter through your conversion rates and see which stores are performing least, and then jump in and start to investigate. Why might that be? One thing to note here is that Genetec is not, this application is not specific to one brand of hardware. So typically if your retailer has a multitude of different camera brands, well, we can tap into those cameras as sensors and leverage that existing security infrastructure to have consistent view of KPIs throughout their entire retail operation. There's also the map-based view that can compare and map certain store locations, and then we'll jump into each location through the map-based view there. So I'm now going to jump into my reports. This is essentially the Retail Sense is that reporting engine. And notice that the core modules that we have here include visits, conversion rates, queues, heat maps, flow or directional analysis, as well as people. What we'll do is go through each one by one. So this allows me to compare certain stores, certain districts, compare my Paris location versus my Berlin location. I can stack that information up to see what it looks like together. I can also change the way the information is presented. Do I want bars, or just a pie chart, or just get it in a table, and of course export and run additional tests on these, right? And there's no restriction as to how many locations we add to the reporting tool. It's intended to be restrictionless. Add as many users as you want, and anyone can sort of jump in and play around and sort of make their own estimations or play around with whatever information is being presented. So that's essentially for visits. We're looking at the evolution of visits throughout the hour. We can, of course, change the timing up here to compare yesterday to last year at the hour level or at the day level. We can also jump into conversion rates here, so we can see the relationship that visits have with conversion rates and compare that with a couple of different locations. Same apply for queues, for example. Here we have a camera that's typically used for loss prevention purposes that can also be used for dual purpose to let us understand our queue business, right? We can see in real time how many people are at each queue. And of course, based on a rough order of magnitude, we can use this for forensic research and understand how long does it take for, say, 80% of my consumers to abandon the queue after waiting more than 5 minutes. So if that's the case, we'll ensure that our threshold never exceeds 5 minutes because we want to cater to 80% of our customers, right? But at the same time, we can be notified in real time when a certain queue becomes too dense, right? When we see that there's a lot of people idling in that queue, that there's not much movement, we'll send off a notification to the operator or to a multitude of different stakeholders within the store to turn that undesirable situation, which is, you know, walking into a store and saying, oh, there's too many people in the line, I'm going to come back later on, to a desirable situation where the queues are managed efficiently. Jumping into heat maps. Heat maps are a great tool. Again, another example of leveraging your existing security camera, your existing security camera placement to get a second view, sort of a dual use out of this camera, right? So now marketing can understand how effective their promotion is. Let's take an example here. In this area, we have an in-store promotion from these what looks to be cakes have been dropped down from $7.99 to $4.99, and I can see right off the bat that it's not really making its mark. It's not really attracting a lot of people to that area. People are sort of zooming by. So of course I can make changes to the product placement, or perhaps the promotion wasn't marketed effectively. But I can also change over to visualize dwell, right? So we have activity versus dwell. Activity shows us how many people or how much, what does the footfall look like in that specific area, whereas dwell shows us how much do people idle within that specific area. So this is great for retail marketing, but also merchandising to see how people sort of are drawn to their certain end caps, as well as buyers. Buyers, of course, that need to negotiate with vendors. They can actually justify their monthly pricing for occupying parts of their shelves based on hard evidence, right? Tangible evidence. How many people, how many impressions are we getting at these specific parts of our store? Now, the problem with heat maps is while they're great, they're sort of still gut feel, and it lacks that quantitative aspect, right? So we're looking to solve that using directional analysis or flows so that we can actually visualize the consumer purchase journey within the store. So flow helps us understand that cross-shopping behavior between certain departments. We want to see how many people move from, say, the jewelry department to the belt department or the shoe department. And we see that there's 88% of people jump from one department to another. Well, we know right away that these two departments are very, very much regressed, and we'll try to use that information for our product placement decisions and our store layout decisions. Now, talking with a couple of retailers and retail architects, we asked retail architects what one of their pains were working with retailers, and they admitted that a lot of retailers make their store layout decisions based on gut feel alone. They don't have metrics that back up their decisions. So when they had a look at this, at directional analysis in general, they thought that this would make a great tool to help back up their decisions and make sure that that the store layout is perfected based on how the consumers jump from different department. And finally, we have our people counting. So I'd like to tell a little story about, sorry, not people counting, but face capture in general. I'd like to tell a little story about one of our retail customers that had a problem marketing men's underwear. So they launched a line of men's underwear, their own private brand of men's underwear that was not at all a successful launch. They noticed that sales were not really picking up, and they were scratching their heads. They thought it could be a couple of things. But one of the core marketing managers that dealt with launching the product had a look at the packaging, and they knew that their target market was men, but she had a sort of a gut feel that perhaps it's not men that we should be targeting. Perhaps we should be targeting women, right? Because she herself, she was buying men's underwear for her husband and for her kids, and she thought that perhaps others do the same. But of course, like any good marketer, we can't just assume that everyone does what we do. So she thought, I can visit a couple of stores and see how people actually interact with the product. But she had a great idea, and she asked if she can speak with security and view a couple of stores by analyzing their video stream to see how do they actually interact in that specific department. And to her surprise, she discovered that there were mostly women that walked into that department. They were not exactly stimulated because the packaging and the messaging was not directed to that demographic. And so she was able to make a change their target market, and they effectively turned something that was undesirable, like low adoption, into something that was desirable, which was an increase in adoption for that line of product. So that's just one example of why we're putting people or face capture within a nice light web client, so that retail marketers can get a little sense at their customer base, understanding the demographics within their store, not leveraging facial recognition, but just face capture alone, where it's detecting a face and it's applying it there within one pane of glass, so that you can make better decisions about some of the demographics within your store. So that's what I wanted to show you for the Retail Sense demonstration. What I will do now is show how certain parts of the application can better meet the needs of our retail profiles that we're addressing. So we're noticing that the buying decision is sort of changing. There are more and more people on that are part of the group decision to decide whether they want to invest in retail intelligence. So there's quite a few actors here. We have our marketing department, which is typically the decision maker. Operations, retail operations, again, another decision maker. Merchandising or buyers are typically influencers or decision makers. And we also have the profiles that we're used to talking with, our loss prevention department, IT department, along with security. So a challenge that we'll have going to market with this application is that we're speaking with an even larger audience now. It's not just limited to loss prevention, IT, and security, but now we're talking with this whole different department within the business, right? So the question is, how do we sort of enroll, how do we get these people on our sides? How do we bring everyone together so that we can make a successful pitch, right? So the intention here is to talk to our existing contact, which would be loss prevention within our retail outlets, and have that contact introduce us to this whole new department, right? The retail marketing managers, operations managers, and merchandising managers. And they are ranked by driving force. Typically, what we've seen is that retail marketing is most likely to reach out. They're also most likely to pay, often because they have a larger budget. So the suggestion we're making here is we should suggest pooling departmental budgets for collective buy-in and sell a win-win solution, right? Loss prevention is always looking for modernizing their security equipment, all the while working with shrinking budgets, while marketing typically has the budget, but of course looking for insights into their business so that they can understand which promotions are effective, which aren't, and ultimately lead to more effective marketing. So how can Retail Sense help retail marketing? Some of the questions that retail marketers ask themselves is, how do I measure which store displays are attracting customers? How do I adjust my marketing strategy to better appeal to my target audience? How do I measure marketing campaign effectiveness that are actually drawing in footfall, drawing in guests, and driving purchases? And how do I optimize my promotion pricing to appeal to certain store locations? And the answers are all ultimately solved using Genetec Retail Sense. So you can analyze dwell time and heat maps for particular points of interest. You can uncover the demographic trends within your store by analyzing the faces collected. You can correlate visits and average basket value to your marketing campaign. So know which out of the events that you have or out of the campaigns that you're planning for certain days, how do they affect your footfall and your average basket value. You can also examine the evolution of your conversion rates and benchmark them to other store locations. So certain points of interest for retail marketers would include getting a quick glance at vital statistics within certain stores, looking at conversion rates so that they can benchmark the evolution of conversion rates over time and compare them to other stores or other districts. And also just organize their in-store marketing promotions into that retail calendar and monitor how effective their promotions are. It's also a great way to collaborate with other stakeholders like operations and merchandising to ensure that we're collectively planning for a successful campaign. All the while developing that in-depth picture of your customer base to adjust that marketing strategy to make sure it's more relevant to your demographics. How can Retail Sense help retail operations or customer engagement managers? Often there's some fancier titles out there in the market. So the questions they're asking themselves is, how do I intend on reducing attrition caused by long queues? How do I enhance the customer experience by ensuring that guests get the attention they need? And how do I ensure that I have enough employees staffed to meet the scheduled peaks that we're expecting? Of course, the answers are solved with Genetec Retail Sense. So we can send notifications in real time when an additional lane or queue is needed. We can respond to areas of high customer count or long dwell time through notifications, essentially optimizing the exposure that staff have with customers. And we can analyze visits over time and perfect or optimize our staffing schedule. So certain points of interest for retail operations or customer engagement professionals would include looking at visits or just analyzing footfall in general so that they can optimize their floor staff in order to meet customer visits and reduce floor staff budget while sort of maximizing conversion rates, right? Our cost of labor is very expensive for brick and mortar retailers. We want to make sure that our staff are always busy helping customers and not sort of twiddling their thumbs. You'll see in the second picture here, be notified when a department becomes overly crowded. So by counting how many people are within a specific department, we can send off notifications to essentially notify operation managers that there is a specific department that has recently received an influx of consumers. So perhaps staff that are not busy helping consumers from different departments can run over and save the day. The same applies for queue management, so be notified when queues surpass a desired length in order to mitigate the risk of customer abandonment. And finally, retail merchandising. They're asking questions like, how do I audit my inventory of replenishment? How do I gauge which products require higher visibility in order to sell? How do I ensure products are appealing to the demographics of my guests? And how do I know whether the store layout is optimal for my guests? Of course, the questions are answered with Genetec Retail Sense, where they can analyze snapshots of certain displays in order to gauge whether their assigned product is properly stocked. They can undergo directional analyses in order to analyze the dwell times of specific areas or departments to see whether it requires higher visibility, is there a lot of dwell or people just passing by and picking it up. They can also compare age and gender of their guests by making better purchasing decisions and conduct directional analysis using heat maps to perfect that store layout. So certain points of interest for merchandising or buying professionals would include using heat maps as an aid in store layout and product placement decisions, but also analyzing some of the snapshots that they have to ensure that their products are properly stocked and in good quality. Often merchandisers are tasked with the responsibility of visiting random stores, doing quick product audits to ensure that their products are in fact stocked and in good quality. So if they can have a tool where they can just tap into the video feed without having to go through security, and then that would serve as a low-cost auditing tool. And they can also uncover trends in footfall behavior to aid in product placement and store layout decisions by looking at their flow, looking at the consumer purchase journey. To add on top of that, we are offering a promotion where your retailer store, so your first store is on us. You can count on Genetec Retail Sense to provide that better shopping experience. We're so confident that we're giving it to our end users. We're giving our end users the opportunity to try it in one of their stores completely on us. So this trial will include visitor counting, directional analysis or flow, along with heat maps. You'll get unlimited reporting. However, there is a 30-day storage retention period. So to summarize, this is the channel connections that we'll be speaking to in the next couple of slides will be waived for the very first store. There's no restriction on how long this can be installed. However, the only restriction is that there is a 30-day storage retention period. So of course, after 30 days, the data that's stored within the cloud will be destroyed, unless of course they purchase a paying package. So with that said, I'll kindly hand it over to Stefan Suter, the application group lead, to take us through the Retail Sense roadmap and a little bit more on ordering, pricing, and support.
Well, thank you very much, Derek, and hello and welcome also from my side. Maybe before I jump into the roadmap, just a few words. Derek already mentioned it. The restructuring Genetec is undergoing and creating these application groups that are focused on one application or one vertical, like the retail application group, which I am building and leading right now. So this is something very exciting, and this is our first application here. And while going into this roadmap, I'm trying to advance the slide here. Yes. Perfect. No, that was one too many. Sorry for that. I just wanted to point out that, as you've probably already seen in the presentation so far, what we built here is totally decoupled from Security Center in many ways. For once, it's a cloud-based product or a hybrid product leveraging analytics on the premise and doing the rest in the cloud. So we are also decoupled from a release schedule, which means that we will be adding features on probably a monthly basis or sometimes even shorter because it's a cloud-based product. And just to point out, as we are talking today of what you have seen so far, the visitor counting and the directional flows are available. And going ahead over the next few months, we will be adding all these features that you have seen now. And this is our current plan to have the heat maps and queues already in Q2, so this is what's coming out next. And then by Q3 this year, we'll be tying in POS for conversion rates and face capture and adding other widgets such as the calendar and weather data in there. So the full package, which you have seen here, will be available by the end of the year. All right, and now I'll get into the details of how we're actually going to make this work, how you can order this, how you can get support for all of this. And I'll start right out with our order process and pricing. We've tried to make it as simple as possible in just one part that includes everything you need on a per sensor per camera basis. So we are charging $50 per month MSRP or $550 per year. And that includes your own online environment. So basically the demo you've seen before, but your own personal environment with an unlimited set of user. And this also includes the video analytics you're going to need on-premise to either generate the heat maps, count people, capture the faces. So all of that is included in that one part. And of course, as all subscription-based products from Genetec, it includes Genetec Advantage. And important for you, dealer discounts apply up to 35%. Now getting into the sales tools, we are providing an online demo system, and basically this is just what Derek showed you in the presentation before. You can actually use this also to demo Genetec Retail Sense, and it is the real interface, the real thing, but with fake data. And ultimately you can play around, hack away. There's nothing you can destroy. As soon as you load a new session, it will be reset to what it was before. So I invite you all to click on that link afterwards and log in and play around with it and use it as much as you like, because it's a great way to actually show and give a feel. I much prefer demoing this than any PowerPoint slides usually. And having said that, of course, after we've shown the demo and we generated some interest, we are going to get into proof of concept, I am pretty sure, and we already are there. And there is a number of ways we can do that to make it efficient. And I just want to point out too, and this I'm already repeating this from the video analytics webinar, if any of you joined that a few months back, we can use recorded video, for example, to extract data if questions of accuracy come up, and that is a concern. And in the future, we're also looking into federating or using federated cloud cameras for POCs as well, which will make the footprint of such a POC a lot less on your side as well. And just a few notes on the installation. It's a two-tiered installation because on-premise you will typically have Security Center, you will have the Kiwi Vision Analytics extracting the data, and then there is a small Retail Sense agent that will actually push the data into Microsoft Azure, into our cloud environment, and that will be configured together. So everything you've already heard about the analytics is true, plus that little agent to configure with the cloud dashboard. And so everything I already said about video analytics configuration, you can do that online. It's very efficient for fine-tuning, and you can also use historical data to fine-tune that. And let me just jump to the next. And having said that, that's why also for Genetec Retail Sense, the video analytics course and certification is a requirement because you'll have to make sure that you know how to install and fine-tune those video analytics. And we've included the part when it comes to configuring the Retail Sense agent and the cloud platform in this course. There is already, I think, multiple offerings on the website, so I really invite you, please sign up, please get your certification. You will need it for Genetec Retail Sense, such as any other of the TV Vision Analytics, and also the upcoming other applications in traffic and airports will also require this just as well. So please make sure you get your certification. It's a fantastic course, and you will learn all about video analytics, the background, what really works, what doesn't work, and it's absolutely worth it. All right, moving along, just a few words. Of course, Genetec Retail Sense will have the same kind of support as any other Genetec product or application. You will have the support through GTAP, and it will meet the same quality and standards. And of course, if required, we can also offer professional services in the context of Retail Sense. Maybe just a few words about the architecture, because that's something I really like to point out. I'm pretty sure all of you have seen some kind of solutions that's maybe doing something similar as we are doing here in one or the other sense. But what I'd really like to point out, I've seen a lot of solutions that work well, maybe in one store, maybe in 10 stores, but then it starts to get tricky into end. We've built our architecture to scale. That's why we chose to partner with Microsoft and build this on Azure. And I can tell you Genetec Retail Sense is capable of not only doing 1, 10, 100, but it can scale up to thousands of locations. And this is something that's very important, and I'd like to communicate to you, because that's also a clear differentiator to many solutions that are out there. And also, it was pretty evident from the demo, but also pointing out, we decided to decouple our dashboards, all the user interfaces completely from Security Center, because the persons that are using these user interfaces are totally different people, as we've learned already before, and the people typically using a Security Center client. And the user interfaces are web browser based, and they are so super simple that basically anybody that's capable of using a modern website can use them. And that was our clear goal here, and that's why all the user interfaces are web-based. It's the latest HTML5, no funky plugins that need to be installed. So it will run on just about any device. And yeah, so just to summarize here about the architecture, on-premise, you will have your Security Center server, your cameras, your POS. The video analytics will be running on, ideally on that same machine, depending on the number of challenges, and then channels, and then pushing the metadata to the business intelligence platform in Microsoft Azure, and that's where it is configured. Okay, just a few words on compatibility. Security Center-wise, to use the analytics requires Security Center 5.4 and up, Pro or Enterprise, and also, of course, Security Center Retail. And typically, not going to go into the details, but we can use a secondary stream from the camera to do Kiwi Vision analytics. And having said that, in case the question is in the back of your head, yes, you could even use Genetec Retail Sense if there is no Security Center on-premise, because I do get this question quite a lot, so I want to answer it right here and now. If any such other cases than the stated requirements come up, please just talk to us, and most likely we will be able to find a solution to that situation. And just a few words about maintenance expectations. Well, obviously it's web browser based, so there is no client installation at the users. It's a cloud-based platform. We'll do automatic upgrades, like I said before, on a very short shut Azure, so it's very secure and also redundant storage and very, very scalable. Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, Stefan. What I'll do is I'll take the audience through the next couple of slides here, talking about some of the sales tools that we have planned for you guys, as well as a quick sum up on the support team that's available for your selling efforts, and then we'll take the conversation into more of a Q&A. So some of these sales tools that you can expect that are available today include a higher level booklet that sort of talks about the challenges that retailers face, along with an overview of retail intelligence in general, along with a Retail Sense brochure, the one that's highlighted in white here. This Retail Sense brochure talks specifically to the promotion that we have going on, along with speaking to people counting and visualizing that consumer purchase journey. We will also have a product presentation available, which provides a brief intro and a more in-depth overview of the product, as well as into the retail challenges. We should have a marketing video coming within Q3 of 2017, along with the webinar presentation, so this very slide deck that we're using today, and the associated video recording, all of which will be available on the channel partner portal within the coming weeks. And introducing you to the Retail Sense support team. So for your sales efforts, do rely on our retail business development team, including Scott Thomas in North America and Mathieu Says in Europe and France, supporting EMEA. We also have Stefan Suter, who's been presenting, who is the Retail Application Group Lead, along with Phil Caetano. He's the Development and Delivery Lead, so he's leading the team of engineers to take us through the roadmap. And myself, Derek Arcuri, the Product Marketing Manager, so for any questions on sales tools or sales support from a marketing perspective, you can reach out to us specifically. So with that said, I'd like to thank you for your participation throughout the last 50 minutes or so. What we'll do is we'll jump on pause, we'll review some of the questions that we've had funneled in, and then sort of summarize those questions within the next couple of minutes or so. So we have one question here asking 35 is max or is registration pricing available? If we can just kindly ask you to sort of rephrase that question, because it might have been asked throughout a specific part of the presentation, so doesn't really, not sure what that question is asking.
Eric, I think I can pick that one up.